The great hall of the Galactic Assembly stretched wider than any building on Earth. Thousands of delegates from hundreds of species sat in floating platforms that rose toward a ceiling lost in darkness. Light came from glowing crystals embedded in the walls, casting everything in soft blue and gold. This was the heart of galactic civilization, where the fate of worlds was decided with words instead of weapons. Ambassador Alina Vasquez stood alone on the human delegation platform. She was 53 years old, with gray streaks in her dark hair and calm brown eyes that had seen both tragedy and triumph. Her formal uniform was simple, compared to the elaborate robes and ceremonial armor worn by other species. She preferred it that way. Humans had only joined the galactic community 15 years ago, and Alina believed in letting actions speak louder than appearances. Today, however, would test that belief. The Valkyrie High Commander stood on the central speaking platform, his massive form casting a long shadow across the assembly floor. Torvax was impressive by any standard. He stood nearly 3 meters tall, covered in thick gray scales that could stop most projectile weapons. His forearms were folded across his broad chest, and his yellow eyes swept across the assembly with obvious contempt. The Valkyrie Dominion had ruled their sector of the galaxy for 6,000 years. They had never lost a war, though in truth they rarely needed to fight one. Most species surrendered the moment the Valkyrie declared their intentions. Alina watched Torvax with quiet interest. She had studied his species extensively. The Valkyrie were conquerors, but they were also deeply traditional. Their wars followed ancient rituals, beginning with formal declarations designed to terrify enemies into immediate submission. It was psychological warfare perfected over millennia, and it had worked on every species they had ever faced, until now. Torvax raised all 4 arms, and the assembly fell silent. His voice boomed through the chamber, amplified by invisible technology. "I speak now to the humans of Earth," he began. "Your species has committed crimes against the Valkyrie Dominion that cannot be forgiven. You have settled worlds in space that belongs to us. You have refused to pay the tribute that all lesser species owe to their superiors. And worst of all, you have treated our diplomats as equals when you should have bowed before them." Alina kept her expression neutral, though inside she felt a spark of amusement. The tribute Torvax mentioned was essentially protection money. Pay us, or we will destroy you. As for treating their diplomats as equals, Alina had simply offered a Valkyrie ambassador a handshake. Apparently, that was a grave insult to a species that expected others to kneel. Torvax continued his speech, describing in detail the terrible punishment that awaited humanity. His fleet would blockade Earth's colonies. His armies would march across human worlds. Any resistance would be crushed without mercy. He spoke of past conquests, naming species that had been reduced to slaves or worse. Some of those species still existed in the assembly. Alina noticed them looking away in shame. The performance lasted nearly 20 minutes. Torvax described the size of his military, the advanced weapons his species possessed, and the futility of resistance. He painted a picture of inevitable defeat, of human cities burning, of humanity's children growing up under Valkyrie rule. It was designed to terrify, and based on the reactions of other delegates, it was working. Several species were already looking at the human platform with pity in their various eyes. Alina simply listened. When Torvax finally finished, he pointed directly at her with one clawed finger. "You have heard the declaration of the Valkyrie Dominion. You have 3 standard days to surrender unconditionally. If you do not, we will take by force what you have refused to give freely. Your species is young and weak. You cannot hope to stand against us. Choose wisely, human." The assembly waited. This was the moment when other species had broken down, when ambassadors had wept and begged for mercy, when entire civilizations had crumbled from fear alone. The Valkyrie had seen it happen dozens of times. They expected nothing different from these newcomers who had barely mastered interstellar travel. Alina Vasquez looked at Torvax for a long moment. Then she did something that no one in that chamber expected. She laughed. It was not a nervous laugh or a polite chuckle. It was a genuine, deep laugh that echoed through the silent assembly hall. Alina actually had to wipe tears from her eyes as her shoulders shook with amusement. Several delegates gasped. A few thought she had gone mad from fear. The Velkari soldiers standing guard behind Torvax exchanged confused glances. Torvax's scales flushed dark red with anger. You dare laugh? You stand on the edge of extinction and you find this amusing? Alina took a moment to compose herself, still smiling broadly. I apologize, Commander. That was rude of me. It is just... She paused, looking around the assembly at all the different species, watching her with a mixture of horror and fascination. Do any of you know what kind of world Earth is? Have any of you actually studied where humans come from? Silence answered her question. Alina nodded, as if she expected this. I thought not. You see, Commander Torvax, your speech was very impressive. Truly, you have clearly frightened many species into submission with such displays. But I am afraid you have made a terrible mistake today. You have declared war on a species without understanding what you are facing. Torvax growled low in his throat. We have studied your pathetic military. Your ships are crude. Your weapons are primitive compared to ours. You are nothing. Our military. Alina shook her head slowly. Commander, I am not talking about our military. I am talking about our planet, our home. You see, in galactic classification systems, there is a category for worlds that are considered too dangerous for intelligent life to evolve. Worlds with extreme conditions, deadly environments, hostile ecosystems. Do you know what those worlds are called? A delegate from a nearby platform spoke up, his voice trembling. Deathworlds. They are called Deathworlds. But those are just legends. No sentient species could possibly evolve on such a planet. Alina turned to face the delegate with a warm smile. And yet here I stand. She looked back at Torvax. Earth is a death world, Commander. Our sun bombards us with radiation that causes cancer. Our planet is covered in a highly corrosive gas called oxygen that makes up 1/5 of our atmosphere. Water falls from our sky without warning. The ground beneath our feet can crack open and swallow entire cities. Mountains explode and bury everything for hundreds of kilometers in ash and fire. Our magnetic poles shift. Our climate changes. Everything on our planet, everything, has spent billions of years trying to kill everything else. The assembly had gone completely still. And the creatures we share our world with, Alina continued, her voice calm and conversational. We have insects whose sting can stop a human heart. We have fish that can strip flesh from bone in minutes. We have bacteria that can survive in boiling water and freezing ice, even in the vacuum of space. We have parasites that can control the minds of their hosts. And Commander, we keep some of these creatures as pets. We think they are cute. Torvax said nothing. His yellow eyes had narrowed. Alina stepped forward on her platform, her voice carrying clearly across the silent chamber. You want to know why I laughed at your declaration of war? Because my species has spent its entire existence fighting for survival against a universe that wanted us dead from the moment we took our first breath. We did not evolve on a comfortable world with gentle conditions. We clawed our way to sentience through ice ages and plagues and disasters that would have wiped out any other species in this room. We are what we are because everything that was not strong enough, not smart enough, not stubborn enough to survive, died. She smiled at Torvax. And there was something ancient and dangerous in that smile. You have declared war on Deathworlders, Commander. I laughed because you clearly have no idea what that means. But I promise you, before this is over, you will understand. You will all understand. The assembly erupted into chaos, but Alina simply stood still, watching Torvax with calm eyes, waiting for the war she knew was coming. And somewhere deep inside, she was still smiling. They declared war on humanity. The Deathworlder ambassador answered with laughter part. 2. The education, the Galactic Assembly did not calm down for nearly an hour after Alina's response. Delegates shouted questions. Some demanded proof of her claims. Others called for the session to be suspended. The Velkari delegation stood in angry silence, their scales shifting colors as they struggled to process what had just happened. No species had ever responded to a war declaration with laughter. It was unthinkable. When order was finally restored, High Commander Torvax spoke again. His voice was controlled, but Alina could see the uncertainty behind his yellow eyes. The human ambassador makes bold claims. Perhaps she hopes to frighten us with stories of her primitive homeworld. But stories do not win wars. Ships and soldiers win wars. And in both, the Velkari are superior. Alina raised her hand politely, requesting permission to speak. The assembly moderator, a small creature from a species known for their neutrality, granted her the floor with obvious reluctance. Commander Torvax, Alina said calmly, I understand your doubt. If I were in your position, I would also be skeptical. So I would like to request something unusual. Before this war begins, I ask permission to educate this assembly about Earth and humanity, not to plead for peace, but simply to ensure that everyone understands what is about to happen. Consider it a courtesy from one civilization to another. Torvax made a sound that might have been a laugh. You wish to delay the inevitable with a history lesson? Very well, human. Speak your piece. It will change nothing. Lena nodded her thanks and gestured to the assembly's central display system. Holographic images began to appear in the air above her, showing a small blue and green planet orbiting an average yellow star. This is Earth, she began. It looks peaceful from space. Many planets do, but let me show you what that peaceful appearance hides. The image zoomed in, showing swirling white clouds. Our atmosphere, Alina explained, contains approximately 21% oxygen. For those who do not know, oxygen is one of the most reactive and corrosive gases in the universe. It causes metal to rust. It makes things burn. Every breath we take is filled with a substance that is slowly trying to oxidize our bodies from the inside. We adapted to this. We evolved to not only survive breathing poison, but to require it. Without oxygen, we die within minutes. Several delegates made sounds of discomfort. The Valkyrie breathed the nitrogen-heavy mixture and found oxygen unpleasant. Alina continued. Our planet has a molten core of liquid iron and nickel. This creates a magnetic field that protects us from solar radiation. But it also means that the ground beneath our feet is floating on a sea of liquid metal. The surface is broken into massive plates that constantly shift and grind against each other. When they move suddenly, we experience earthquakes. Cities fall. Mountains rise. The very ground tries to kill us. The hologram showed footage of earthquakes, buildings collapsing, the earth splitting open, and then there are volcanoes. The image shifted to show a mountain exploding, throwing ash and fire into the sky. Mountains that explode without warning, covering everything for hundreds of kilometers in ash and molten rock. One such eruption, 75,000 years ago, nearly made our species extinct. Our entire population dropped to perhaps 10,000 individuals. But we survived. We always survive. Alina let the image fade and looked around the assembly. Shall I tell you about our weather? Water falls from our sky. Sometimes it falls frozen into ice. Sometimes it falls so hard that it causes floods that drown entire regions. Our planet has massive rotating storms that can be hundreds of kilometers wide, destroying everything in their path. We call them hurricanes, typhoons, cyclones. They happen every year. We have learned to predict them, prepare for them, and rebuild after them. She paused, letting her words settle. And I have not even begun to describe the creatures we share our world with. The hologram showed a series of earth animals. A great white shark with rows of razor teeth. A box jellyfish with invisible tentacles that could kill in minutes. A mosquito, tiny and seemingly harmless. This small insect, Elena said, pointing at the mosquito, has killed more humans than all our wars combined. It carries diseases that have wiped out millions upon millions of our people throughout history. And yet it still exists. We have not driven it to extinction because we have learned to live alongside death. It is simply part of our world. She showed more creatures. Crocodiles that had remained unchanged for millions of years. Venomous snakes. Spiders whose bite could cause flesh to rot. Bears that could tear through metal. Wolves that hunted in coordinated packs with intelligence that bordered on strategic. And here, Alina said with a slight smile, is what we call a dog. The image showed a golden retriever tongue out, looking happy. We took wolves, one of the most effective pack predators on our planet, and we domesticated them. We made them our companions. Our children play with descendants of creatures that once hunted us. That is what humans do. We do not just survive threats. We find ways to make them part of our lives. Torvak spoke up, his voice less certain than before. You speak of your planet and its creatures. But what of your species itself? A dangerous world does not make a dangerous people. Lena nodded slowly. A fair question, Commander. Let me tell you about humanity. The hologram shifted to show early humans, small and vulnerable on an African savanna. We evolved as persistence predators. Do you know what that means? We were not the fastest animals on our world. We were not the strongest. We did not have sharp claws or venomous bites. But we had one advantage that nothing else possessed. We could run. Not fast, but far. Our bodies developed the ability to cool themselves through sweating, something almost no other land creature on Earth can do. When we hunted, we did not chase our prey and catch it quickly. We followed it. For hours. For days. We walked after it while it ran, and when it stopped to rest, we kept coming. We never stopped. We followed our prey until it collapsed from exhaustion, till its body failed from overheating, until it simply could not run anymore. And then we killed it. The assembly was completely silent. That is what we are, Elena said quietly. We are the species that does not stop. We do not give up. When the ice ages came and glaciers covered our world, we survived. When plagues killed half our population, we survived. When we fought wars against each other with weapons capable of destroying entire cities, we survived. We always survive because we do not know how to quit. She looked directly at Torvax. And there is one more thing you should know about humans, Commander. We split the atom. We learned to release the energy that holds matter together. And the first thing we did with this knowledge was build weapons. We created bombs that could destroy entire cities in a single flash of light. We built missiles that could end all life on our planet. And we pointed these weapons at each other. For 50 years, we lived with the knowledge that at any moment we could destroy ourselves completely. And we did not. Elena stepped forward, her voice steady. We stood at the edge of self-annihilation, and we chose to step back. We chose survival. We chose to be better. That is the species you have declared war on, Commander. Not because we are the most dangerous. We are. But because we are also the most stubborn, the most adaptable, and when we choose to be the most merciful. You could have left us alone. You could have treated us as equals. Instead, you threatened our homes and our children. And now you will learn why that was a mistake. Torvak stood motionless, processing everything he had heard. Around him, the assembly murmured with fear and fascination. Some delegates were already quietly instructing their staff to send messages home, warning their governments about what they had learned. Elena smiled calmly. You have 3 days to withdraw your declaration, Commander. I suggest you use them wisely. Because if this war begins, it will end only one way. Humanity will still be standing. And you will understand exactly what it means to challenge a species born on a death world. She turned and walked back to her platform, leaving the assembly in stunned silence. The war had not yet begun, but everyone in that chamber understood that something had changed. The galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. They declared war on humanity, the Deathworlder ambassador. Answered with laughter Part 3. The response: the 3 days passed without Valkyrie withdrawal. High Commander Torvax had listened to Elena's words, but pride ran deep in his species. No Valkyrie commander had ever retreated from a declared war. To do so would bring shame upon his entire bloodline for generations. So despite the doubts growing in his mind, Torvax ordered his fleets forward. The first target was New Manila, a human colony on a jungle world in the Outer Territories. It was a farming colony, home to approximately 200,000 civilians. The Valkyrie expected it to be an easy victory. Blockade the planet, land ground forces, round up the population, and present humanity with proof of their helplessness. It was a strategy that had worked countless times before. Admiral Kethfer commanded the Valkyrie task force assigned to New Manila. He brought 15 warships and 30,000 ground troops. By Valkyrie standards, it was an overwhelming force for such a small colony. He expected surrender within hours of his arrival. What he found instead confused him completely. When the Valkyrie fleet entered orbit around New Manila, they detected no military vessels. The colony had no defensive fleet, no orbital weapons platforms, nothing that could threaten warships. Admiral Kethfer allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. This would be even easier than expected. He broadcast a message to the planet below. Humans of New Manila, you are now under Valkyrie control. Lay down any weapons and gather in your central settlement. Resistance will be punished severely. Cooperation will be rewarded with mercy. The response came from a woman named Governor Reyes. Her voice was calm, almost friendly. Admiral, I appreciate the offer, but I am afraid we must decline. We have discussed your proposal, and we have decided to stay right where we are. If you want this planet, you are welcome to come down and try to take it. We will be waiting. Admiral Kethfer did not understand. Civilians did not fight. That was a universal constant across the galaxy. When military forces arrived, civilians fled or surrendered. They did not invite invasion. He decided that the human governor was simply confused about her situation. He sent his ground forces down the next morning. The first wave of Valkyrie soldiers landed in dropships near the colony's largest farming community. They expected to find frightened civilians hiding in buildings waiting to be collected. Instead, they found empty streets and silent buildings. The humans had vanished. Commander Vareth led the ground operation. He was a veteran of 6 planetary conquests, and the empty settlement made him uncomfortable. His soldiers spread out, searching buildings, finding abandoned meals and personal belongings, but no people. It was as if the entire population had simply disappeared. Then the attacks began. The first Valkyrie soldier fell to a projectile weapon fired from a building 300 meters away. The shooter was gone before anyone could locate them. 20 minutes later, an explosion destroyed a Valkyrie transport vehicle. No one saw who planted the device. By midday, Commander Vraeth had lost 30 soldiers without ever seeing a single enemy. The humans were not hiding. They were hunting. What followed was something the Valkyrie had never experienced. The humans fought without honor, without rules, without anything resembling the civilized warfare the Valkyrie understood. They attacked from hidden positions and then disappeared. They planted traps that wounded soldiers who tried to pursue them. They struck at night, when Valkyrie eyes struggled to see. Moving through the darkness like ghosts, Commander Vareth called for reinforcements. More soldiers landed, but more soldiers simply meant more targets. A farmer who had spent his life growing rice revealed himself to be an excellent shot with a hunting rifle. A group of miners used their knowledge of explosives to collapse a tunnel on a Valkyrie patrol. A retired schoolteacher named Maria Santos spent one evening reading about guerrilla tactics on her personal computer, and then organized a network of resistance cells across the continent. The Valkyrie could not understand it. These were not soldiers. They were ordinary people. Farmers, teachers, shopkeepers, parents. They should have been terrified. They should have surrendered to save themselves and their families. Instead, they fought with a determination that bordered on madness. Private Keth, young Valkyrie soldier, reported something that disturbed his commanders deeply. During a skirmish, he had wounded a human male with a plasma blast to the leg. The wound was severe and clearly painful, but instead of screaming or begging for mercy, the human had looked at his injury, said something in his native language that Keth did not understand, and then continued shooting while using his belt as a bandage. The human was smiling Commander Vareth pulled his forces back to a defensive position and sent an urgent message to Admiral Kethfer in orbit. These creatures do not behave like any species we have conquered. They do not surrender when wounded. They do not flee when outnumbered. They adapt to our tactics faster than we can change them. I have lost 400 soldiers in 3 days, and I have not captured a single settlement. Request immediate reinforcements or permission to withdraw. Admiral Kethfer denied the withdrawal request. Retreat was unacceptable. He sent another 5,000 soldiers to the surface. The humans responded by changing their tactics again. Instead of fighting the new troops directly, they targeted supply lines. Food shipments were ambushed. Water purification equipment was sabotaged. Communication relays were destroyed. The Valkyrie found themselves fighting not just an enemy they could not see, but a planet that seemed determined to kill them through starvation and thirst. Meanwhile, Ambassador Alina Vasquez appeared before the Galactic Assembly once more. She reported on the situation at New Manila with the calm demeanor of someone discussing the weather. "I want to clarify something for the Assembly," she said. "The people fighting on New Manila are not soldiers. They are farmers and workers and families who were simply living their lives until the Valkyrie arrived. We have not sent our military to New Manila yet. We wanted to see if the colonists needed help." A delegate from a species called the Tyranni, known for their nervous disposition, raised a trembling appendage. "You mean those are civilians? Ordinary humans with no military training?" Alina nodded. "The colonists have requested some additional supplies. Medical equipment mostly, and ammunition, but they have specifically asked us not to send military forces. They feel they have the situation under control." The assembly fell into stunned silence. Alina continued. "Governor Reyes has informed me that the human population of New Manila is actually enjoying the challenge." Those were her exact words. Enjoying the challenge. She mentioned that the Valkyrie invasion has brought the community together in ways she had not seen before. People who never spoke to each other are now working side by side. Old disagreements have been forgotten. She said it reminds them of stories their grandparents told about Earth's history. When communities united against common threats, die. Commander Torvax, watching from the Valkyrie delegation platform, felt something he had never experienced before in his long military career. It was a cold sensation in his chest, a weight that made breathing difficult. He did not have a word for it in his language, because the Valkyrie had never needed such a word. The humans would have called it fear. A message arrived from Commander Varath on New Manila. The human resistance had captured a Valkyrie supply depot. Instead of destroying the food and medicine inside, they had distributed it to Valkyrie soldiers who had become separated from their units. The humans had fed their enemies, treated their wounds, and then released them with a simple message. "Tell your commanders this does not have to continue. Surrender, and we will show you mercy." Torvax stared at the message for a long time. What kind of species showed mercy to invaders? What kind of people fought like demons and then offered kindness to defeated enemies? Nothing in his experience prepared him for this. Nothing in Valkyrie's history offered guidance. He was beginning to understand what Alina had meant when she said he did not know what he was facing. And for the first time in his life, Torvax wondered if he had made a terrible mistake. "They declared war on humanity," the Deathworlder ambassador answered with laughter. Part 4. The turning 6 weeks after the invasion of New Manila, the human military finally arrived. Admiral Grace Okonkwo commanded the response fleet from her flagship, the UES Persistence. She had waited patiently while the colonists demonstrated what ordinary humans could do. Now it was time to show the Valkyrie what trained soldiers were capable of. The human fleet emerged from Velster, daylight travel at the edge of the New Manila system. There were only 12 ships compared to the Valkyrie's 15. But Admiral Kethver felt his confidence waver when he saw them. Human warships looked nothing like the elegant vessels of other galactic species. They were brutal things, covered in thick armor plating, bristling with weapons, painted in dark colors that made them hard to track against the void. They looked like machines designed by people who expected everything to try to kill them, because that was exactly what they were. Admiral Okonkwo opened communications with a simple message. "Valkyrie Fleet. This is Admiral Okonkwo of the United Earth Navy. You have 1 hour to withdraw from this system. If you remain, we will remove you by force. This is your only warning." Admiral Kethver responded with the traditional Valkyrie challenge. "Human Admiral, you are outnumbered. Your ships are inferior to ours. Withdraw now, and I will allow you to leave with your lives." Okonkwo's response was brief. 59 minutes remaining. Velkari did not withdraw. Pride would not allow it. Admiral Kethfer arranged his fleet in the classic Velkari battle formation, crescent-shaped designed to envelop enemy vessels and destroy them with concentrated fire. It was a formation that had hundreds of engagements over thousands of years. The humans did not form any recognizable formation at all. Their ships spread out, seemingly at random, maintaining distance from each other in a pattern that made no tactical sense to Velkari observers. Admiral Kethfer assumed it was evidence of human inexperience in space combat. When the hour ended, the human fleet accelerated toward the Velkari position. What followed would become one of the most studied battles in galactic military history. The Velkari fought with precision and discipline. They followed the established rules of galactic warfare, targeting enemy vessels in order of threat, coordinating fire between ships, maintaining formation integrity. They did everything correctly according to 6,000 years of military tradition. The humans fought like they were insane. Human pilots executed maneuvers that should have killed them. They pushed their ships into acceleration curves that subjected their bodies to crushing gravitational forces. Forces that would have knocked Velkari crew members unconscious. But humans had evolved on a heavy gravity deathworld. Their bodies were denser, their bones stronger, their cardiovascular systems more robust. They could survive what other species could not. Human ships took damage that would have destroyed vessels from any other fleet and kept fighting. Their redundant systems activated automatically. Their crews sealed breached compartments and continued operations from backup control centers. One human destroyer, the Santiago, lost its main bridge to a direct hit. The crew simply transferred command to the engineering section and turned to the battle. But it was the human marines that truly terrified the Velkari. When human boarding vessels latched onto Velkari warships, Admiral Kethfer expected standard boarding operations. Soldiers in protective suits, moving carefully through corridors, engaging in long-range firefights. That was how civilized species conducted ship-to-ship combat. Human marines did not fight like civilized species. They came through breached holes, wearing minimal armor, carrying weapons designed for close-quarters combat. They moved fast, faster than any soldier Kethfer had ever seen. They fought in spaces so confined that plasma weapons were useless, using blades and projectile weapons and sometimes just their hands. They showed no fear of death. They showed no hesitation. A Velkari captain reported that a human marine had continued fighting for 30 seconds. After receiving wounds that should have been immediately fatal, the battle lasted for hours. By the end, 8 Velkari warships had been destroyed or disabled. The remaining 7 attempted to flee the system. Human ships pursued them relentlessly. Just as Alina had described humans pursuing prey on ancient Earth, they followed the fleeing Velkari vessels for 6 hours before, finally disabling the last of them, and then something unexpected happened. Admiral Okonkwo broadcast a message to the disabled Velkari ships. Attention, Velkari vessels. Your ships are disabled. Your weapons are offline. You are no longer a threat. We are dispatching rescue teams to evacuate your crews. Do not resist. You will be treated as prisoners of war under the Geneva Conventions. Admiral Kethfer, wounded and sitting in the wreckage of his command bridge, did not understand. In Velkari warfare, defeated enemies were killed or enslaved. There was no concept of prisoner treatment. Why would the humans spare those who had tried to kill them? Human shuttles docked with the disabled Velkari vessels. Medical teams came aboard, treating wounded Velkari soldiers with the same care they would give their own. Human doctors worked for hours to save Velkari lives. Even though those same Velkari had been trying to kill humans just hours before, Private Keth, the young soldier who had survived New Manila, was among the prisoners. A human medic named David Chen treated his injuries, working carefully to remove shrapnel from his shoulder. Why? Keth asked through the translation device. Why do you help us? We came to conquer you. We killed your people. David Chen looked at him with an expression Keth could not interpret. Because you are not our enemy anymore. The war is not over yet. But this fight is finished. You surrendered. That means you are under our protection now. Ket struggled to understand. But we would not have shown you mercy. If we had one, we would have killed you or made you slaves. David Chen nodded slowly. I know, but that is your way. This is ours. We fight like demons because we have to. But we show mercy because we choose to. My grandmother used to say that anyone can be cruel when they are winning. It takes real strength to be kind. The prisoners were transported to human vessels and treated with respect. They were given food, medical care, and quarters that were small but clean. Human officers questioned them about Valkyrie fleet positions and military capabilities. But there was no torture, no threats, no punishment for refusing to answer. News of the battle and its aftermath spread quickly through the galaxy. The Galactic Assembly convened an emergency session to discuss what had happened. Species that had watched humanity with fear now watched with something else. Confusion, perhaps? Or the beginning of respect. Ambassador Elena Vasquez addressed the assembly once more. Her expression was serious but not triumphant. I want to be clear about something, she said. We did not come to this galaxy to conquer. We did not come to prove that we are stronger than everyone else. We came because we wanted to explore, to learn, to meet other species, and share in the wonder of a universe that is bigger than any of us imagined. She paused, looking toward the Velkar delegation. High Commander Torvax was not present. He had returned to Velkari space to oversee the war effort personally. The Velkari forced this war upon us. We did not want it. But when someone threatens our homes and our families, we will fight. We will fight with everything we have, using every skill we developed on our Deathworld. We will be terrifying enemies, because that is what survival requires. Plena's voice softened. But when the fighting stops, we will also be something else. We will be merciful. We will heal the wounded, even if they are our enemies. We will offer prisoners dignity and respect, because that is also what survival requires. Any species can destroy. Only the truly strong can choose to build instead. She looked around the assembly, meeting the eyes of delegates from dozens of species. The Velkari started this war. We will finish it. But we will not become monsters in the process. That is our promise to this galaxy. That is what it means to be human. The assembly was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, delegates from species that had never supported humanity before began to signal their approval. It was not much. A gesture here, a sound there, but it was the beginning of something new. The war was not over yet. But for the first time, the galaxy was beginning to understand that humans might be exactly what they needed. They declared war on humanity, the Deathworlder. Ambassador answered with laughter, Part 5. The answer 3 months after the war began. Human forces stood at the border of Valkyrie core territory. The war had not gone well for the Dominion. Colony after colony had fallen to human advances. Not through destruction, but through a combination of overwhelming force and unexpected mercy. Velkari soldiers who surrendered were treated well. Velkari civilians were left unharmed. Human forces captured territory and then simply waited, offering peace terms that seemed impossibly generous. High Commander Torvax did not understand any of it. In his experience, war was about dominance. The strong crushed the weak and took what they wanted. But the humans did not behave like conquerors. They behaved like something else entirely, something he had no word for. Now Torvax stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking at tactical displays that showed human fleets positioned to strike at the Velkari homeworld itself. His military advisors had told him the truth he did not want to hear. The Dominion could not win this war. The humans were too strong, too adaptable, too relentless. If the war continued, the Valkyrie would be destroyed completely. Valkyrie tradition demanded that Torvax die fighting. A commander who could not achieve victory was expected to seek an honorable death in battle, taking as many enemies with him as possible. His ancestors had done so. His children would expect him to do the same. But something Elena Vasquez had said months ago kept echoing in his mind. We stood at the edge of self-annihilation, and we chose to step back. We chose survival. We chose to be better. A communication request arrived from the human fleet. Ambassador Alina Vasquez was requesting a private meeting with High Commander Torvax. She was offering to come to his ship alone, without guards, without weapons. She was offering to trust him with her life, against the advice of everyone around him. Torvax agreed. Alina's shuttle docked with the Velkari flagship an hour later. She walked through the corridors alone, passing Velkari soldiers, who watched her with expressions ranging from hatred to confusion to something that might have been respect. She did not show any fear. She did not show any arrogance. She simply walked like someone going to meet an old friend. Torvax received her in his private command chamber. He stood nearly twice her height, his forearms crossed over his armored chest. His yellow eyes studied her carefully, looking for signs of deception or weakness. He found neither. Ambassador Vasquez, he said formally. You have come to demand my surrender. Alina shook her head. No, Commander. I have come to talk. She gestured to a chair, asking permission to sit. Torvax granted it with a small nod. Alina sat down, her posture relaxed, and looked up at the massive Velkari warrior. Tell me about your people, she said. Torvax was confused. What? Your people? The Velkari. Tell me about them. Not your military history. I know that already. Tell me about your culture, your traditions. What matters to you beyond conquest? For a long moment, Torvax simply stared at her. No enemy had ever asked such a question. It made no sense. But something in Alina's eyes, a genuine curiosity that seemed impossible given the circumstances, made him answer. He spoke for nearly an hour. He told her about Velkari art, which celebrated strength and victory. He told her about their family structures, their religious beliefs, their ancient stories of heroes who had built the Dominion from nothing. He spoke of things he had never shared with anyone outside his own species. And Alina listened to every word. When he finished, Alina nodded slowly. Thank you for sharing that with me. Now I understand you better. Why does it matter? Torvax asked. We are enemies. You have defeated us. Understanding changes nothing. Alina leaned forward. Commander, I need to tell you something about humans. We have a very strange history. For most of our existence, we fought wars against each other. Nation against nation, tribe against tribe. We killed each other in numbers that would horrify any species in this galaxy. There were times when we came close to destroying ourselves completely. She paused, her expression thoughtful. But something changed. Slowly, painfully, we learned a different way. We learned that enemies can become friends. We learned that nations that once tried to destroy each other can become allies. We learned that the same strength that makes us dangerous also allows us to forgive. Torvax made a dismissive sound. Pretty words, but they do not change the reality of power. Do you know what Germany is? Alina asked. Torvax shook his head. Germany is a nation on Earth. 70 years ago, they fought a war against much of the rest of humanity. They committed terrible crimes. They killed millions of innocent people. When they were defeated, many expected them to be destroyed, erased from history. Lena smiled slightly. Instead, we helped them rebuild. We became their allies. Today, Germany is one of the most respected nations on Earth. Former enemies now work side by side. She stood up and walked toward Torvax, showing no fear of his size or his weapons. I am not here to demand your surrender, Commander. I am here to offer you something better. Partnership. Torvax's scales shifted color, a sign of deep confusion. Partnership. With humans, we tried to conquer you. We killed your people, and we could destroy you now. We have the power. But that is not who we want to be. Elena's voice was gentle but firm. The Velkari became conquerors because you believed strength meant domination. But there is another kind of strength. The strength to help others. The strength to build rather than destroy. The strength to turn enemies into friends. She outlined her proposal. Instead of crushing the Velkari Dominion, humanity would offer assistance. Human engineers would help strengthen Velkari worlds against natural disasters. Human scientists would share technology that had helped humanity survive Earth's harsh conditions. Human doctors would teach Valkyrie healers techniques developed on a Deathworld. In exchange, the Valkyrie would end their tradition of conquest and join the galactic community as equals, not masters. Why would you do this? Torvax asked. You owe us nothing but revenge. Alina looked at him with something like compassion. Because we know what it is like to be afraid, Commander. We know what it is like to feel that you must dominate or be dominated. We lived that way for most of our history. And we learned eventually that there is a better path. We are offering you the chance to find that path too. She extended her hand toward him. It was a human gesture of friendship and agreement, one that Torvax had learned about during his studies of human culture. Such a gesture required trust. It required vulnerability. Torvax looked at her small hand for a long time. Everything he had been taught told him that this was weakness, that accepting help from a former enemy was shameful. But he also remembered watching human medics save Valkyrie lives. He remembered the prisoners who had been treated with dignity. He remembered how the humans had fought like demons and then chosen mercy. Maybe strength was not what he had always believed it to be. Slowly, carefully, he reached out with one of his four hands and took Elena's in his grip. Her hand was small and fragile, easily crushed, but she showed no fear. She simply smiled. Welcome to the future, Commander, she said, the next day. Torvax appeared before the Galactic Assembly to announce the end of the war. Delegates watched in stunned silence as he described the peace agreement. The partnership, the new path the Velkar Dominion would follow. When asked why he had surrendered to creatures his species had once dismissed as primitives, his answer surprised everyone. We declared war on humanity, expecting them to be like every other species we have conquered. We were wrong. They are Deathworlders. They were shaped by a universe that tried to kill them every moment of their existence. They should have become monsters. Instead, when they had us at their mercy, they chose to laugh, to teach, and finally, to offer friendship. That is why they terrify me. And that is why I believe they may be exactly what this galaxy needs. Lena watched from the human delegation platform. A young diplomat beside her asked if she had really believed the Valkyrie would accept peace. Alina smiled. The same smile she had worn when she first laughed at Torvax's declaration of war. I believed they could be better. That is the human way. We always believe people can change. Sometimes we are wrong, but when we are right. She gestured at the assembly, where delegates from dozens of species were already approaching the Valkyrie with offers of trade and cooperation. When we are right, we change everything. The war that began with laughter ended with hope, and the galaxy would never be the same again.